Kind girl brings homeless man home. Little did she know he's disguised vampire king. Wants only her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into our story. Meet Emma, a young woman living in a small, modest apartment in the heart of a busy city. Emma wasn't rich, and she didn't have much, but she had a big heart. She worked as a waitress in a cozy little cafe, struggling to make ends meet. Despite the long hours and low wages, she always tried to stay positive and help others whenever she could. One cold evening, as she was walking home after a late shift, she noticed a man sitting on the sidewalk in the pouring rain. His clothes were ragged, his face pale and gaunt, as if life itself had abandoned him. Emma hesitated for only a moment. She couldn't just walk by. As a kind-hearted person, she knew she had to help. She approached him, her heart aching as she saw his condition. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. The man didn't respond, his eyes dull, as if he were lost in his own world. Emma knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she placed a warm coat over his shivering body. "You're going to catch a cold like this. Let me help you," she said. The man looked up at her, his eyes glimmering for just a moment, before he lowered them again, as if he hadn't heard her. With a sigh, Emma helped him to his feet, offering him her arm for support. "Come on, let's get you inside somewhere warm." She led him to her apartment, unsure of what exactly she was getting herself into, but she couldn't turn her back on him. The apartment was small, but it was warm, and that was all that mattered. She helped him sit on the couch, offering him a glass of water, but he remained silent. Emma made sure to cover him with a blanket and left him to rest while she started to clean up the mess in her tiny kitchen. As she worked, her thoughts wandered to the mysterious man in her living room. Who was he? Why did he look so out of place? Her mind raced with questions, but for now, all she could do was wait. Little did she know, the man she had brought into her home was far more than just a homeless stranger. He wasn't just any man. He was a vampire king, disguised and hiding in plain sight. And there was something about Emma that made him want her, need her, like no one else before. What he didn't expect was the kindness she showed him. That kindness would change both their lives forever. But for now, Emma had no idea just how deep this encounter would go. She had simply helped a stranger, but in doing so, she had unknowingly opened a door to a world she never imagined could exist. I was about to finish cleaning up the kitchen when I heard a soft noise coming from the living room. I stopped in my tracks, my heart racing. It was the man I had helped earlier. His voice, barely a whisper, caught my attention. He was awake. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked toward the living room, unsure of what I would find. There, on my couch, the man was sitting up, looking around with a blank expression on his face. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, they were not vacant. They were sharp, almost predatory. He looked different. Not the disoriented figure I had helped moments ago. His presence seemed more powerful. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He didn't respond immediately, but then his lips parted, revealing a faint smile. It was strange, not comforting, but unsettling. "Thank you for bringing me here," he said, his voice low and smooth. "You've been kind to me, and for that, I am grateful." The words hung in the air, strange and cryptic. I nodded, unsure of how to react. The whole situation felt surreal. "It's no problem," I said, trying to sound casual, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. "I couldn't just leave you out there in the rain." He studied me, his gaze intense, almost as if he were looking into my soul. "No," he said slowly, his voice becoming more serious. "You could have, but you didn't. That's what makes you different." There was a pause, and the air in the room seemed to grow heavier. I took a step back, feeling suddenly exposed under his piercing gaze. The man, no, I couldn't call him just that anymore, wasn't acting like a homeless person anymore. There was an energy about him that I couldn't explain, a strange power that radiated from him, making me feel both safe and scared at the same time. "You're not who you said you were, are you?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He didn't answer right away, but instead, a cold smile curled at the corner of his lips. "You're perceptive, he replied, his voice dark and almost amused. No, I'm not just some random man you found on the street. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Who are you? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He tilted his head slightly, studying me, as if deciding how much to reveal. You would never believe me if I told you, he said softly. His words sent a chill down my spine. Try me, I managed to say, my voice firmer than I felt. He paused for a long moment, his eyes flashing with something ancient, something deep. I am a king, he said, his voice steady. A king of vampires. I blinked, certain that I had misheard him. What? I whispered, unable to believe what I had just heard. He seemed to sense my disbelief, and with a sigh, he stood up slowly, walking toward the window. His movements were graceful, almost inhumanly so. It's not a fairy tale, he said, looking out into the night. I am a ruler, bound by a world you cannot even begin to imagine. But you, he turned to look at me, his gaze intense. You have something that intrigues me. I took a step back, my mind racing. A vampire king? Was this some sort of joke? A part of me wanted to laugh, but the look in his eyes kept me rooted to the spot. Why me? I finally asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to stay calm. He took a step closer, his gaze softening slightly, but there was still an undeniable force behind his words. Because you saw me, he said simply. You didn't run away. You didn't question why I looked different. You just helped me. And that makes you more valuable than you know. The room seemed to shrink around me, the air thick with tension. I couldn't deny that there was something different about him, something magnetic, something that pulled me toward him. But this was too much. I don't understand, I said, feeling both lost and terrified. He moved closer, his eyes never leaving mine. I didn't expect this to happen, he said, his voice softening. But now that you've seen me, now that you've shown me this kindness, you're involved. And I won't let you go. The words sent a shock through me, and suddenly I realized that my life was about to change forever. This man, this vampire king, wasn't just some stranger I had helped out of the rain. He was someone powerful, someone who could see things I couldn't. And now, he wanted something from me. Something I wasn't sure I was ready to give. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Was this some kind of trap? Or was he really who he said he was? As I stood there, paralyzed, I felt his gaze upon me, heavy and unyielding. You can run if you want, he said softly. But you'll never escape what's already been set in motion. I swallowed hard, the reality of the situation sinking in. I had no idea what I had gotten myself into, but I knew one thing for sure. My life would never be the same again. I stood there, frozen, as his words echoed in my mind. You can run if you want, but you'll never escape what's already been set in motion. The intensity in his voice made it clear. This wasn't a normal situation. It wasn't a chance encounter. It was something much bigger, much darker than I could ever have imagined. My heart raced in my chest, and for a moment, I couldn't move. What did he mean by that? And more importantly, what had I gotten myself into by just offering a homeless man shelter for the night? I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears as I struggled to process his words. He stood there, waiting for me to respond, his eyes never leaving mine. There was something mesmerizing about them, something deep and ancient. I couldn't look away. Why me? I whispered, still unsure if I was ready to hear the answer. He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. Because you're not like the others, he said, his voice low and filled with an emotion I couldn't place. You saw beyond the surface. You saw a man in need, and you helped him. That's rare, and it means something. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself. I don't understand. Why does that mean something to you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was a smile that sent a chill down my spine. Because I've been watching you, he said softly, his voice almost a purr. From the moment you helped me, I knew you were different. I could feel it. The power you hold within you. The connection we share. I felt a knot form in my stomach. This was getting too strange, too fast. What power? What connection? What do you mean? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He took another step forward, his gaze never faltering. I am a vampire king, he said again, as if stating the obvious. And you? He paused, watching me carefully. You are the key to breaking the curse that binds me. The words hung in the air like a weight I couldn't escape. Curse. Vampire King? None of this made sense. I wanted to laugh, to brush it off as some twisted joke, but the look in his eyes told me this wasn't a joke. He was serious. Too serious. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, trying to back away, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. I'm just a waitress. I'm no one special. He shook his head slowly, as if he was disappointed in my response. You think so little of yourself, he murmured. But that's where you're wrong. You have a power inside you, a bloodline that's more ancient than you realize. You're a part of something bigger than yourself, something that has been waiting for you. I shook my head, feeling my heart race again. This is crazy, I whispered. I can't be part of anything like that. I don't even know you. He stepped even closer, until we were only inches apart. You will, he said softly, his voice almost tender. You will know me, and you will understand your place in all of this. But first, you need to trust me. I wanted to step back, to tell him to leave, to end this nightmare. But there was something about him, something magnetic, that kept me frozen in place. It wasn't just his looks or the way he spoke. It was the way he made me feel. There was power in his presence, a strength that both terrified and fascinated me. Trust you? I asked, my voice trembling. How can I trust someone who just told me they're a vampire king? He looked at me, his expression softening for a moment. I know it's hard to believe, but it's the truth. And you need to understand that you have a role in this story. A role that could change everything. The silence between us stretched on, and for a moment, I wondered if I should run. But where would I go? This man, this vampire king, had already twisted my life in ways I didn't understand. I had already helped him, and now there was no going back. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled again, but this time it wasn't as cold as before. I want you to help me break the curse that's been placed on my bloodline, he said. I want you to be with me, by my side, so we can end this. Together. The weight of his words hit me all at once. Help him? Break a curse? I didn't know how, or even if I could. But one thing was certain, I couldn't just walk away. Not now. Not when everything was changing. What do I need to do? I asked, my voice barely audible. He reached out, gently taking my hand. Trust me, he said again, and you'll know what to do. Soon enough. His touch sent a jolt through me, something I couldn't explain, but it felt like I was making a choice I couldn't undo. And as much as I wanted to run, as much as I wanted to push him away, I knew that I couldn't. Not anymore. Not when I was already too involved. The path ahead was unclear, and the dangers were unknown. But in that moment, I understood that I was no longer just a waitress. I was part of something much bigger. And my life, our lives, were about to change in ways I couldn't possibly imagine. I still felt the coldness of his touch lingering on my skin as he led me into the living room. The air in the apartment felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't explain. His presence seemed to fill the space, making the small apartment feel even smaller. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. This wasn't normal. Nothing about this was normal. But what choice did I have? I had already helped him, brought him into my home, and now I was entangled in whatever world he came from. I sat on the couch, my hands nervously twisting in my lap. What do you want from me? I asked again, my voice barely above a whisper. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something old and wise. He moved slowly toward the window, his movements almost fluid, like he was floating rather than walking. I need your help, he said, his voice low, as if he were confiding in me. You are part of a prophecy that was written centuries ago, a prophecy that will determine the future of my bloodline. I blinked, struggling to process his words. A prophecy? My mind raced as I tried to make sense of everything he was saying. I'm not part of any prophecy, I said, shaking my head. I'm just a waitress. I don't even know who you really are. He turned to face me, his expression softened but still intense. You don't believe me yet, do you? He asked, his voice almost playful, as if this were some kind of test. But you will. Soon enough. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words caught in my throat. Deep down, I knew he was right. Something inside me was already drawn to him, something beyond mere attraction. There was an undeniable pull, a magnetic force that I couldn't escape. And it terrified me. What exactly is this prophecy? I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to remain calm. He took a deep breath, his gaze distant, as if remembering something long forgotten. It's been passed down through generations, he began, his voice becoming more serious. A curse was placed upon my bloodline long ago, one that can only be broken by a pure soul. A soul like yours. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. My soul. I repeated, incredulously. What are you talking about? I'm just a normal person. He stepped closer, his eyes darkening. You don't see it, do you? He said, his voice barely a whisper. The purity in you. The strength in your heart. You're not just anyone. You are the key to ending the curse that has plagued my family for centuries. The weight of his words pressed down on me, and I felt like the walls were closing in. This couldn't be real. I had never asked for any of this. I was just trying to survive, to get through each day, and now my life was spiraling into something I couldn't control. But how? I asked, my voice barely audible. How do I break this curse? He took another step forward, his presence overwhelming. The curse can only be broken by the bond between us, he said, his eyes locked onto mine. A bond that must be formed through trust, through acceptance. I know it's hard to believe, but you have to trust me. I shook my head, my mind spinning. This was too much. Too fast. I can't, I whispered. I don't even know you. How am I supposed to trust you? He reached out, gently taking my hand in his. His touch was surprisingly warm, despite the cold, and I felt a shiver run through me. Because I've already chosen you, he said softly. You were always meant to be a part of this. I didn't choose you out of the kindness of my heart. I chose you because I need you. His words sent a chill through me. The weight of his confession hung in the air between us. I don't know if I can do this, I said, my voice shaky. I don't know if I'm strong enough for whatever this is. He gave me a small, knowing smile. You are stronger than you realize, he said. And you're not alone in this. I will be with you every step of the way. His words were meant to comfort, but they only made my fear grow. What did I really know about him? What if this was all some twisted game? But then again, what if it wasn't? What if everything he said was true? And if it was, what did that mean for me? I was trapped in a world I didn't understand, with a man I didn't know, who claimed to be a vampire king. I had no way of knowing if I was making the right choice, or if I was about to walk into something far more dangerous than I could imagine. But as I looked into his eyes, I felt something I couldn't explain, an undeniable connection that seemed to pull me closer, making it impossible to walk away. I took a deep breath, my mind still racing, and nodded slowly. All right, I said, my voice steadying. I'll trust you, but I need you to tell me everything. I need to understand what's happening, what I'm supposed to do. He smiled, a hint of approval in his expression. You will, soon enough, he said, his voice filled with a strange certainty. And together, we will break the curse. I had agreed to trust him, and now, as I sat there, the reality of what that meant started to sink in. My life had shifted, completely and irreversibly. There was no going back. I had stepped into a world far beyond anything I had ever imagined, and no matter how much I wished I could escape, the pull of whatever was between us was too strong. He stood before me now, his presence overwhelming, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of something I wasn't prepared for. So what's next? I asked, my voice steady, though my heart was anything but. He looked at me, his gaze filled with something unreadable. Now, we begin the ritual, he said softly, his tone serious. The ritual that will bind us together, that will break the curse on my bloodline. The words hit me like a wave. A ritual? What did he mean by that? I had no idea what I was getting into, but I knew that I had already given my consent, whether I truly understood what that meant or not. Ritual, I repeated, trying to make sense of it. What kind of ritual? He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. It's not as simple as it sounds, he said, his voice darkening. There are many forces at play. The curse that binds me is ancient and powerful, and it requires a deep connection between us to break it, a bond stronger than anything you can imagine. I swallowed hard, feeling a knot form in my stomach. This wasn't just about trust anymore. This was something else, something dangerous. What exactly do I have to do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He reached out, his fingers brushing against my cheek, and I froze. The contact was electric, like a spark that sent a shock wave through my entire body. All you have to do is give yourself to me, he said softly, his voice low and intimate. Your heart, your soul, your trust. That's all it will take to break the curse. His words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to pull away, to tell him no, but I couldn't. There was something about the way he said it, the way he looked at me, that made it impossible to turn away. But what happens to me? I asked, my voice trembling. What do I get out of this? He smiled, and there was something reassuring in his expression, though I wasn't sure why. You get me, he said simply, his gaze softening. You will have my protection, my loyalty, my love. I will never let anything happen to you. The weight of his words pressed down on me. Love? Protection? I had never asked for any of this. But here I was, standing on the edge of something that could change everything. How can you be so sure? I asked, my mind racing. How can you promise me that? He stepped closer, his eyes burning with intensity. Because I've lived for centuries, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I've seen countless lives, countless souls, and I've never felt anything like this before. You are the one I've been waiting for, the one who can end this curse. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I didn't know what to believe anymore. My mind was a blur, trying to reconcile the man in front of me with the world I had known before. This wasn't just some fairy tale. This was real, and it was happening to me. I don't know if I'm ready for this, I said, my voice barely audible. I don't know if I can do this. He took my hand, his touch warm and firm, grounding me in the moment. You are more ready than you think, he said, his voice gentle. And you won't be alone. I will be with you every step of the way. Together, we can break the curse. Together, we can change everything. There it was again, that feeling. The pull, the connection that I couldn't explain. It was both comforting and terrifying, and I didn't know how to handle it. But one thing was clear. I had already made my choice. I had trusted him, and now there was no going back. All right, I said, my voice steady but unsure. I'll do it. I'll help you break the curse. He smiled, a slow, knowing smile, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something dark behind his eyes. Good, he said softly. Then we begin. I had agreed. I had made my choice, and now there was no turning back. The Vampire King had told me that this bond, this ritual, was necessary to break the curse, and that it would bind us together in a way I couldn't yet fully understand. I still didn't know what I was stepping into, but I knew it was far bigger than me. And so, we stood in the center of my small apartment, two people on the brink of something unimaginable. He didn't speak at first, but the air between us was thick with anticipation. I could feel the pull, stronger now, as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. Are you ready? He asked, his voice low, almost reverent. I hesitated for a moment, the weight of everything pressing down on me. This wasn't just about helping a stranger anymore. It was about stepping into a world I had no place in. But his gaze, intense and unyielding, made me feel as if I had no choice. I think so, I whispered, my voice shaking slightly. He nodded, his expression softening just a fraction. Trust me, he said again, and this time there was something in his voice, something ancient and knowing, that made me believe him. He reached for my hand, his fingers warm against my cold skin. The moment our hands touched, I felt a jolt of energy rush through me, as if something deep inside me had been awakened. I gasped, pulling back slightly, but his grip tightened. Don't pull away, he said softly. This is the beginning. He guided my hand to his chest, just above his heart. I could feel his heartbeat beneath my fingers, steady and strong, but there was something off about it. It was almost as if his heart beat to a different rhythm, one that didn't quite match mine. We are about to join our fates, he continued, his eyes never leaving mine. You will feel everything I feel, and I will feel everything you feel. This connection will bond us in ways no one can understand. I swallowed, my mind racing. What if I can't handle it? What if it's too much? He smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile. You're stronger than you know, he said, and we will be together. Always. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy with meaning. I wasn't sure if I was ready for all of this. But the moment he spoke, the connection between us deepened. My breath caught in my throat as a strange sensation washed over me. It wasn't painful, but it was intense, like a wave of warmth that started at my fingertips and spread through my entire body. I looked up at him, my eyes wide with shock. What is this? I breathed. This is the beginning of the bond, he said. The bond that will break the curse. The bond that will save my bloodline. I could feel it now, an energy swirling around us, filling the room with an almost tangible force. It was both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. I didn't know how to describe it, but I knew one thing for sure. This was real. This was happening. And I had no idea what would come next. As I stood there, hand pressed against his chest, I felt his heartbeat steady against mine. The air around us seemed to pulse, like it was alive, as if it were responding to our connection. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The energy, the pull, it all vanished, leaving only silence in its wake. I looked up at him, breathless. "It's done," he said, his voice softer now, but still carrying that same intensity. "The bond is formed. We are connected." I didn't know what to say. I was overwhelmed, both by the power of what we had just done and the uncertainty of what it meant for my future. But one thing was clear: I was no longer just a waitress. I wasn't just a bystander in his world. I was a part of it now, bound to him in a way I couldn't fully understand. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice small. He smiled, a glimmer of something darker in his eyes. "Now," he said, his voice low and steady, "we finish what was started. We break the curse, and we begin a new chapter. Together." My heart raced in my chest as I realized the truth of his words. This was only the beginning. And no matter how much I wanted to run, no matter how much I feared what was to come, I knew there was no turning back. The bond was formed, and we were bound together, whether I was ready or not. I stood in the dimly lit room, my hand still pressed to his chest as the reality of what had just happened sank in. The bond between us was real, undeniable, and yet, I still couldn't fully grasp what it meant. The air around us was thick with a strange energy, and I could feel it pulsing, almost like a heartbeat of its own. I looked up at him, my mind spinning with questions, but before I could speak, he took my hand in his. His grip was warm, reassuring, but there was something behind his eyes that told me we were about to face something far more dangerous than I could imagine. "You're part of my world now," he said softly, his voice low and steady. "And I will protect you, no matter what." The weight of his words pressed down on me. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I knew that there was no turning back. He had told me that this bond would break the curse on his bloodline. But what did that mean for me? What was I supposed to do now? "What happens next?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "What do we do to break the curse?" He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming as always. "We go to the place where it all began," he said. "The curse is tied to a specific location, and it's been guarded for centuries. We need to break through the protection that surrounds it." I nodded, my heart racing. "Where is this place?" I asked. "It's an ancient castle, hidden in the mountains," he replied, his eyes darkening. "It's the seat of my power, and it's where the curse was first cast upon my bloodline." "And you think going there will break the curse?" I asked, still struggling to wrap my mind around everything. "I know it will," he said with certainty. "But it won't be easy. There are forces that will try to stop us. Powerful forces that won't want this curse to end." The fear that had been slowly building inside me now surged to the surface. I hadn't signed up for any of this. I was just a regular person, trying to live my life. Now, I was part of a world I didn't understand, and it seemed like the stakes were higher than I ever could have imagined. "What kind of forces?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He met my gaze, his eyes hardening. "Other vampires," he said. "Vampires who have been loyal to the curse, loyal to the old ways. They'll do anything to keep it intact." I felt a chill run through me at his words. Other vampires? I had barely wrapped my head around the fact that he was a vampire king, and now I was being told that there were more of them, and they might be coming after us. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice steadier now. "We have to be ready," he said, his voice low. "We'll leave tonight. The longer we wait, the stronger the curse becomes. But we need to be prepared. We can't go in blindly." I nodded, though fear clawed at me. My whole life had been turned upside down in a matter of days, and now we were about to embark on a journey that could change everything. "How do we prepare?" I asked, looking up at him. "First, we need to gather supplies," he said. "We'll need food, weapons, and other items to protect ourselves." "Weapons?" I repeated, my heart pounding in my chest. "Are you saying we'll have to fight our way through?" "If we have to," he said grimly. "There are creatures that guard the castle, and they won't hesitate to kill us if we're not careful." The thought of fighting anything, let alone creatures I had never even heard of, made my stomach turn. But I couldn't back out now. I had already made my choice. I was in this with him, for better or worse. "Okay," I said, trying to steady my nerves. Let's do it. Let's break this curse. He smiled, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something softer in his eyes. Together, he said softly. We'll do it together. As he led me out of the apartment, the weight of what lay ahead settled over me. The journey we were about to take was dangerous, unknown, and filled with unimaginable risks. But I had already chosen this path, and now there was no turning back. The bond between us had been formed, and I knew that I couldn't turn my back on him now. I was part of this world now, and together, we would face whatever came next. I could hardly sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw images of the ancient castle he had spoken of, dark, looming, and surrounded by an aura of danger. The weight of what we were about to do settled heavily on my chest. I had already made my choice. I had crossed a line that I couldn't undo, but I had no idea just how far I was willing to go. I kept thinking back to his words. Together, we will break the curse. There was a small part of me that believed him, but there was also a growing fear that gnawed at the edges of my mind. What if we failed? What if we weren't strong enough? As the night wore on, I found myself staring at the ceiling, too restless to sleep. And then I heard the sound of footsteps. Soft, but distinct. I turned my head, finding him standing by the window, looking out into the night. His silhouette was framed by the faint moonlight streaming through the glass, and for a moment, he looked like a figure out of a dream or a nightmare. Can't sleep? He asked, his voice cutting through the silence. Neither can I. I sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around my shoulders. What's on your mind? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned to face me, his dark eyes glowing with something intense. The path we're about to take, he said slowly, is filled with danger. There's no going back once we start. I nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. I know, I said, my voice steady. But we have to do this. We don't have a choice. He stepped closer, his presence filling the small room. You're right, he said, his voice softer now. But you need to understand what we're up against. The forces that guard the castle, they won't let us in without a fight. And if we're not careful, we may never leave. The weight of his words hung in the air, and for the first time, I felt the full extent of the danger we were about to face. I had known this would be risky, but hearing him say it made it feel real. Too real. I don't care, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. We have to break the curse. You've waited for centuries. I can't let you suffer any longer. He looked at me for a long moment, his gaze softening. You're braver than you think, he said, his voice filled with admiration. And I won't let anything happen to you. I promise you that. I met his gaze, feeling something stirred deep within me. I wasn't sure if it was love or something else, but I knew that whatever this was between us, it was real. And I had already chosen this path, no matter where it led. What do we need to do first? I asked, eager to take action. He smiled, a flicker of something proud in his eyes. First, we gather our weapons, he said. We'll need everything we can get to fight our way through the guards and the creatures that will try to stop us. He stepped back and opened the door to the small closet in the corner of the room, revealing a set of weapons neatly arranged on the shelves. There were swords, daggers, and various tools of battle that looked as though they had been used countless times. We'll need to be quick, he said, pulling a dark, intricately designed sword from the shelf. This isn't just about strength. We'll need to be strategic, too. I watched as he moved with ease, selecting a sword for himself and a smaller dagger for me. This will protect you, he said, placing the dagger in my hand. It was lighter than I expected, the blade gleaming in the dim light. I felt the weight of it in my grip, a symbol of the danger that was now part of my life. Are you sure I'm ready for this? I asked, my voice a little shaky. He looked at me, his expression softening again. You're more ready than you think, and you'll have me by your side every step of the way. I nodded, taking a deep breath. I had no idea what we were about to face, but I couldn't back out now. We had come this far, and there was no turning back. The weight of the dagger in my hand reminded me of the responsibility I now carried. I wasn't just fighting for him anymore. I was fighting for us, for our future. Let's go, I said, my voice steady despite the fear that still lurked inside me. He smiled, his eyes filled with determination. Together, he said, and together, we stepped out into the night, heading toward the unknown. The path ahead was dangerous, and the challenges we faced would be unlike anything I had ever experienced. But I had made my choice, and I knew there was no turning back. We were bound together, and we would face whatever came next, no matter what it took. I felt the weight of the dagger in my hand as we walked through the night, the quiet of the city around us amplifying the nervous tension building between us. My thoughts were scattered, but I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of urgency. We were about to enter a world that neither of us fully understood, and yet, here we were, bound by a curse and a bond that I couldn't fully comprehend. The Vampire King, my Vampire King, was beside me, his presence both a comfort and a warning. I kept thinking about the forces that awaited us, the dangers he had warned me about, and I knew we had to be prepared. "We have to keep moving," he said, his voice steady but urgent, breaking my thoughts. I nodded and quickened my pace to match his. "We don't have much time," he continued, glancing over his shoulder. "The further we go, the closer we get to the castle. But we also get closer to the danger." I could feel my heart racing again. "How much farther is it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We should be there by dawn," he replied. "But the closer we get, the more I can feel them watching." A chill ran down my spine. "Them? Who are you talking about?" He glanced at me, his expression serious. "Other vampires. Loyal to the curse. They'll be aware of our approach, and they won't hesitate to stop us." The thought of facing more vampires, especially ones loyal to a curse I barely understood, made my chest tighten with fear. I gripped the dagger tighter, the cool metal offering some sense of control in a situation that felt utterly out of my hands. We continued walking in silence for a few more minutes, my thoughts swirling. The dark streets seemed to stretch endlessly ahead of us, and though the city around us was alive, it felt as though we were stepping into a shadow, into something far more dangerous. I could feel the pull of the bond between us, stronger now, almost suffocating in its intensity. The castle awaited, but so did the uncertainty. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked suddenly, the question slipping out before I could stop it. He didn't answer immediately. I glanced at him, seeing the way his jaw tightened, the way his posture shifted, as if the weight of my question had struck a chord deep within him. "Regret what?" he finally asked, his voice softer than before. "Joining with me," I said quietly. "Bringing me into this world." He looked down at me, and for a moment, I saw something in his eyes, something almost vulnerable. "No," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "I don't regret it. I never would. You're the key to breaking this curse. You're the one I've been waiting for, whether I wanted it or not." His words sent a strange warmth through me, even as my heart continued to race with fear and uncertainty. "But you don't even know me," I said softly, the question lingering between us. "How can you be sure about all of this? About us?" He stopped walking and turned to face me, his gaze intense. "I may not know you fully, but I know that this bond is real. It's not something that can be explained. It's something we both feel." His eyes softened for a moment, and I felt an undeniable pull toward him. "I trust you," he said simply. The sincerity in his voice left no room for doubt. I swallowed hard, the words weighing on me. "I don't know if I can ever truly understand this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm with you. I'm in this, for better or worse." He nodded, his hand reaching out to gently touch my arm. "That's all I need from you," he said, his voice filled with quiet strength. "Your trust. And together, we will end this curse." We resumed walking, the night now feeling even darker, the weight of the words hanging between us. We were close, so close, but the danger was also closer now. I could feel it in the air, thick with a tension that felt like it could snap at any moment. We approached the outskirts of the city, and the lights began to fade, replaced by the ominous shadows of the mountains ahead. The castle, hidden in those mountains, loomed in my mind. I didn't know what to expect when we reached it, but I knew one thing for sure. It would change everything. The journey we had started together, this bond we had forged, had brought us to this moment. And no matter what awaited us, we had no choice but to face it together. We were already too far in. The castle was just ahead, and I could already feel the weight of what was to come. And though I had no idea what would happen when we reached it, one thing was clear. The curse would finally be broken, or we would fall together in its wake. I could feel the weight of the mountain air pressing against me as we walked further into the darkness. The city was long behind us now, replaced by the cold, shadowed paths that led us toward the castle hidden in the cliffs. My heart raced, not from the physical strain of the journey, but from the looming fear of what we were about to face. The Vampire King, who had become both protector and enigma, walked beside me with a quiet confidence, as if he had already prepared for whatever awaited us. His presence was both a comfort and a source of unease. Every step we took felt like we were getting closer to something monumental, something that would either break the curse or doom us both. The silence between us was thick, but it wasn't uncomfortable. We were both lost in our own thoughts, the weight of the mission heavy on both our shoulders. It felt like the air itself had changed, the temperature dropping the closer we got to the castle. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath. "We're almost there," he said quietly, breaking the silence. I nodded, though my throat was tight. "I can feel it," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "The castle, it feels like it's alive." He glanced at me, his expression unreadable. "It is," he replied. "It's not just a castle. It's a prison. A prison that holds the curse I've been bound to for centuries. And it will fight us every step of the way." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I swallowed hard, feeling the full weight of what was coming. We had reached the foot of the mountain, the castle now in full view. It loomed above us, an imposing structure of ancient stone and darkened windows, like a watchful giant. It was as if it had been waiting for us, knowing that we were coming, knowing that the time for the curse to end had finally arrived. The path that led up to it was steep, narrow, and treacherous, but I could see that the Vampire King moved with ease, his every step sure and steady. "Stay close to me," he said softly, his hand briefly brushing mine as we began the climb. "This place will test us. The closer we get, the stronger the defenses will be." I nodded, though I could feel the tension tightening in my chest. The journey had been difficult, but now the real challenge was upon us. We climbed in silence, the only sound the crunch of gravel beneath our feet and the distant howl of wind echoing through the mountain passes. The air grew colder, the oppressive weight of the curse hanging over us with every step. As we neared the castle gates, I could feel the energy around us shifting, thickening, as if something ancient was awakening. I looked up at the castle, the towering structure now looming above us like a dark sentinel. The gates were enormous, iron-bound, and covered in ancient runes that pulsed with an eerie glow. It was clear that no one had passed through these gates in centuries. The Vampire King stopped just short of the gates, his eyes narrowing as he studied the symbols etched into the metal. "It's been years since I've come this far," he muttered. "The curse is strongest here. What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely audible as I stepped closer to him. "We have to open the gates," he said, his voice laced with determination. "But it won't be easy. The magic here is powerful. It's designed to keep people out." He stepped forward, raising his hand to the gates, his fingers brushing the surface of the cold iron. For a moment, nothing happened, and then I saw the faintest shimmer of light emanating from the runes. The Vampire King's eyes glowed faintly as he muttered something under his breath, his voice low and commanding. Slowly, the runes began to glow brighter, pulsing with an ancient energy. The gates groaned, as if waking from a long slumber, and with a final, shuddering motion, they slowly creaked open, revealing the dark, foreboding courtyard beyond. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment press down on me. This was it, the point of no return. The Vampire King glanced at me, his expression serious. "The real test begins now," he said. "Stay close, and stay alert." We entered the courtyard, the stone walls of the castle towering around us. The air was thick with the scent of age and decay, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant sound of our footsteps on the cold stone. I could feel something watching us, something ancient and powerful, lurking in the shadows. "We're not alone," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. The Vampire King nodded, his eyes scanning the dark corners of the courtyard. "No, we're not," he said softly. "The guardians of this place will be watching us. But we have no choice. We must continue." We moved deeper into the courtyard, the castle's ominous presence pressing in on us from all sides. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. We had made it this far, and there was no turning back. We were about to face whatever darkness lay ahead, together. I felt the weight of the Vampire King's presence beside me as we entered the dark courtyard of the castle. The gates had creaked open with a deafening groan, and now, every step felt heavier than the last. The walls around us were covered in centuries-old ivy, and the stone was cold, as though it had absorbed all the darkness of the past. The silence was oppressive, and though I could feel the Vampire King walking next to me, his presence was both a comfort and a warning. He had spoken of guardians, creatures that would try to stop us from reaching the heart of the castle, but the closer we got, the more I could sense something watching us. The castle felt alive, breathing with an ancient energy that I couldn't fully understand. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice steady but with an edge of urgency. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. The air was thick with anticipation, and each shadow seemed to shift and move, as if the darkness itself were alive. The Vampire King walked ahead, his steps silent on the stone floor. I had no idea what to expect. Would there be traps? Were there creatures lurking in the corners? I could feel the fear creeping up my spine, but I pushed it down. I had chosen this path. There was no turning back. "What are we looking for?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He paused, turning back to face me. "The center of the castle," he said, "where the curse was first cast. The heart of this place is where the magic is strongest, and where we will find the key to breaking it." His eyes burned with determination, but there was something more there too. Something ancient, something burdened by centuries of pain and loss. "But be careful," he continued. "This place is filled with traps, and not just physical ones. The curse itself will try to keep us away." My throat tightened at his words. A curse that could fight back? What had we gotten ourselves into? We continued moving through the courtyard, my senses heightened. I could hear the faintest rustling, the scurrying of something in the distance. It was almost as if the castle itself was alive, waiting for us. As we reached the first set of doors, the Vampire King stopped. The door was massive, adorned with more runes that glowed faintly in the dark. He stepped forward, his hand brushing the cold metal as he murmured a few words in a language I didn't understand. The runes flared with light, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw something shift in the shadows, something large, moving in the darkness. "What was that?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. The Vampire King didn't answer immediately. His expression was focused, but I could see the tension in his jaw. "The Guardians are here," he said, his voice low and steady. "We're about to face them." I looked around, my pulse quickening. "Guardians?" I asked. "What do we do?" He turned to face me fully, his eyes locking onto mine with a seriousness I had never seen before. "We fight," he said simply. I felt my stomach drop at his words. Fight. I had never been in a real fight in my life, let alone a fight against creatures that had been guarding this cursed castle for centuries. "I don't know if I can do this," I whispered, fear flooding my chest. He reached out, taking my hand in his touch warm and reassuring. "You are stronger than you realize," he said, his voice steady, filled with something that almost sounded like hope. "We've come this far together. You won't be alone." Just as I was about to speak, a low growl echoed from the darkness. The sound seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the castle, and I instinctively took a step closer to him. The Vampire King's eyes narrowed. "Get ready," he said. "They're coming." The growl grew louder, followed by the sound of claws scraping against stone. From the darkness emerged massive, shadowy figures, creatures that moved with unnerving speed. Their eyes glowed with a menacing red hue, and their teeth gleamed sharp and deadly. The Vampire King stepped forward, raising his sword with ease. The creatures hissed, circling us like predators closing in on their prey. My heart raced, and I could feel the adrenaline surging through me, making my hands shake. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. But I couldn't just stand there. I had come this far with him, and I wasn't about to back down now. I stepped forward, gripping my dagger tightly in my hand. The first of the creatures lunged at us with a terrifying speed, its claws reaching for the Vampire King. Without hesitation, he struck, his sword flashing in the dim light. The creature howled as it recoiled, but it wasn't done yet. "Keep moving," he shouted to me, his eyes never leaving the creature as it circled back. I moved alongside him, trying to keep my footing on the slick stone. The fight was chaotic, the creatures relentless, but I could see the Vampire King was in control. He was a force, a blur of movement, his sword cutting through the darkness with deadly precision. And then, just as quickly as they had appeared, the creatures started to retreat, vanishing back into the shadows. The courtyard fell silent once again, but I knew this was far from over. The battle had just begun, and the castle was only going to get more dangerous from here. The Vampire King turned to me, his breath steady despite the battle. "We're not done yet," he said, his voice grim. "This is just the beginning." My heart pounded in my chest, and I knew he was right. The curse was still here, and the real fight was waiting for us inside. The journey wasn't over. Not yet. I could feel the air thickening around us as we ventured deeper into the castle, our steps echoing against the ancient stone. The sounds of the battle had faded, but the oppressive silence that followed was far worse. Each breath seemed heavier than the last, each shadow more suffocating. The Vampire King walked beside me, his expression unreadable, though I could sense the weight of centuries of responsibility pressing on him. We had defeated the Guardians outside, but I knew that wasn't the end. The real challenge was still ahead of us, somewhere deep within the castle. I could feel it in the way the walls seemed to close in on us, the way the castle itself seemed to pulse with a dark energy. "It's not over," I whispered, more to myself than to him. He glanced at me, his eyes narrowing as though he could sense my thoughts. "No," he replied quietly, "it's just beginning. The curse is tied to this place, to everything here, and breaking it won't be easy." My stomach tightened as his words sank in. I had never imagined that this would be the reality, walking into a place so steeped in dark magic, a place that could fight back against us. The closer we got to the heart of the castle, the more the air felt thick with it. I could almost feel the pulse of the curse, like a living thing, pressing against us. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper. "To the center of the castle," he said, his voice soft but filled with authority. "It's the only place where we can break the curse. But we need to be careful. The deeper we go, the stronger the magic becomes." As we continued down the narrow, winding corridors, the castle seemed to shift around us, the walls seemingly growing tighter, the darkness deepening. It was as if we were moving through a labyrinth, one that had been built not to trap us, but to test us. The Vampire King walked ahead with a determined pace, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. This place affected him in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. "Is this where you've been for centuries?" I asked, my voice barely audible as I followed him. "Yes," he said simply. "It's the source of my curse, and the key to breaking it." "How?" I asked, desperate to understand. "How does this place hold the power to break the curse?" He stopped and turned to face me, his expression intense. "The curse is tied to the magic of this castle. The walls, the stones, everything here was crafted to bind my bloodline to it. The only way to break it is to destroy the source." "The source?" I repeated, confused. "What is it?" He hesitated, and I could see the weight of his next words. "It's a heart," he said, his voice grave. "An ancient heart, placed here long ago. It beats with the power that holds my bloodline captive. If we destroy it, the curse will be broken. But it's not going to be that simple." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "The heart is protected," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "By magic, by traps, by guardians older than the castle itself. And it's more powerful than anything we've faced so far." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The closer we got, the more I could sense the weight of the magic, the ancient power that was both keeping us in and keeping us out. I swallowed hard. "How do we destroy it?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a step forward, his eyes narrowing as if he were sensing something I couldn't. "We'll have to get to it first," he said. "And to do that, we need to reach the heart of the castle. But we're not alone. The Guardians are still here, and they won't let us through easily." My breath caught in my throat as I followed him. The path ahead seemed to stretch on endlessly, but I could feel the pull of the curse, the heart of the castle calling to us. Every step felt like a test, and the closer we got, the more I could feel the magic pressing in on me, tightening around my chest. The Vampire King stopped again, his eyes scanning the room ahead of us. "This is it," he said quietly. "The heart is close, but we need to be ready. Once we step into that chamber, everything changes." I nodded, my hands gripping the dagger tightly, though I could feel the fear building inside me. We were so close now. But I knew that the hardest part was still to come. The battle was far from over. We stepped into the next chamber, the air thick with dark energy. And there, at the center, stood the heart. It pulsed with a sickly light, an ominous rhythm that seemed to beat in time with my own heart. The vampire king stepped forward, his eyes locked on it, his face hardening with determination. "This is it," he whispered. "The end of the curse, or the end of us." I felt my chest tighten as the dark magic pressed in on me, and I knew in that moment that everything would change. We had come this far. There was no turning back now. I stood there, heart pounding, eyes locked on the heart that pulsed with a sickly light at the center of the chamber. The vampire king was beside me, his eyes filled with the same intense determination that had carried us this far. The air around us crackled with magic, dark and powerful, pressing down on us like a heavy weight. The heart, ancient and bound by centuries of curse, seemed to breathe with an eerie life of its own. "This is it," the vampire king said softly, his voice steady, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. "The final step. We either destroy the heart, or we perish with it." My breath hitched. It was hard to imagine how something so small could hold so much power, power that had cursed his bloodline for centuries. "We can do this," I whispered to myself more than to him, though. I wasn't sure I believed my own words. The castle had been relentless, the guardians, the traps, everything we had faced up until now had been nothing compared to what lay before us. But there was no turning back. The vampire king moved toward the heart, his steps deliberate, every inch of him radiating power. The closer he got, the stronger the pulse of magic became. The heart seemed to react to his presence, throbbing with an almost violent rhythm, as if it knew he was here to end it. "Stay close," he warned, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it carried the weight of a command. I nodded and followed him, my heart racing, my grip tightening around the dagger in my hand. We had come so far, through dangers I couldn't have dreamed of, and now we stood at the threshold of ending it all. The curse that had bound him for so long, the curse that had kept him chained to this place, could finally be destroyed. The vampire king reached the heart, his hand outstretched, hovering just above it. For a moment, he paused, and I could see the weight of centuries in his eyes. This wasn't just about breaking a curse anymore. This was about his past, his pain, and everything he had suffered. "This is where it ends," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "This is where I can finally be free." His hand descended toward the heart, and in that moment, everything changed. The heart pulsed violently, sending a wave of dark energy crashing toward us. The walls of the chamber seemed to tremble as the magic intensified. I gasped, stepping back, but the vampire king didn't flinch. His hand continued to lower, and with one final, determined motion, he pressed his palm against the heart. A flash of blinding light erupted from the heart, followed by a deep, resonant roar that shook the very foundation of the castle. The ground beneath our feet cracked and splintered, and I felt a rush of power so intense it nearly knocked me off my feet. For a moment, everything was a blur, light and darkness swirling around us, energy crackling through the air. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything went silent. The pulse of the heart faded, leaving only a profound stillness in its wake. I blinked, my vision slowly clearing. The vampire king stood before me, his chest rising and falling with the weight of what had just happened. The air around us had changed. It was no longer heavy with the curse, but light, as if a great burden had been lifted. The walls, once so oppressive, now seemed to have lost their power, the castle's hold over us broken. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "It's done," he said quietly. His voice was hoarse, as if the effort had drained him. "The curse is broken." I looked at him, my heart swelling with something I couldn't quite describe. Relief, pride, and maybe something else, something deeper. He had been bound for centuries, trapped in this place, and now he was free. We were free. But even as I felt that overwhelming sense of relief, I knew there was no way to go back to the lives we had known. This had changed everything. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice quiet, but filled with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. The vampire king's lips curved into a faint smile, though it was tinged with sadness. "Now, we rebuild," he said softly. "The world has changed. And so have we." The castle, once a symbol of his torment, now stood as a testament to his freedom. The curse was gone, but the journey we had embarked on had left its mark on both of us. I knew there was still so much to learn, so much to understand, but in this moment, I couldn't help but feel like we had won. Together, the Vampire King stepped away from the heart, his eyes searching mine. There was no longer the weight of the curse between us, just the quiet, undeniable connection that had grown stronger with each passing moment. "Let's go," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "There's a new beginning waiting for us." And with that, we turned, leaving the heart, the castle, and the darkness behind. The world outside awaited us, and for the first time in centuries, it felt like the future was ours to shape. Together, in this thrilling tale of love, power, and destiny, we dive into a world where a vampire king and a courageous woman join forces to break an ancient curse. From the very first steps into the ominous castle to the final confrontation with the heart of the curse, this gripping story unfolds in a landscape filled with dark magic and looming dangers. As they navigate through shadowy corridors and face countless threats, their bond grows stronger, leading to an inevitable clash with forces that have guarded the Vampire King's fate for centuries. This is one of the most intense vampire stories, blending romance, action, and mystery in an unforgettable adventure. Will they succeed in breaking the curse that binds the Vampire King, or will their journey end in destruction? Follow their journey through perilous twists and turns, where every choice could mean life or death. Vampire stories often explore themes of eternal struggle, and this one captures that perfectly as our protagonists venture into the heart of darkness, fighting against time and enemies alike. Prepare yourself for an experience like no other as these vampire stories reveal a world where magic, curses, and love intertwine in ways you never expected. Don't miss out on this intense, emotional roller coaster of a tale, where every moment is fraught with danger and the stakes are higher than ever before.